Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy Friday afternoon on a slower week. Can everybody hear me okay? Hello. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm going to send the mic over to Taylor. I think I sent it to you, but Linus, I'm going to send it you on also. And thank you all so much, Matt. Thank you, Linus, Taylor. Billawall will be joining us shortly, but we are all here today to go over the last week in AI. And I guess we have developments every day, but it has been slower, so that's a blessing. And we just want to just talk about a few of the top line items that are coming that we've kind of recently learned about. So let me send this over to Linus also. But if so, Matt, you want to start, or you want to wait a few minutes about?
Sure, I can jump in. Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely been a slower week. We had two insane weeks with GPT-4 and Bard and Firefly and NVIDIA and Canva and ChatGPT plugins and just, announcement after announcement after announcement. We just had some crazy weeks. So this week it actually felt like things settled down a little bit. We got to relax a little bit. There is a few little news items that have popped up this week that I think will be fun to chat about. I would say probably the deepest rabbit hole is this letter that all of these entrepreneurs and engineers and people in tech signed around how they want to put a pause on anything more powerful than GPT-4 for the next 6 months. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that quite a bit. There's also news coming out of Italy today that they want to ban ChatGPT in Italy, or I don't know if they're trying to ban ChatGPT or they're frustrated because ChatGPT isn't complying with their GDPR. And so there's a whole bunch of issues coming up with that. I hear that people still in Italy have access to ChatGPT, but ChatGPT is not allowed to collect data. So there's that kind of ties into that whole conversation there. And then there's also the news that Midjourney just stopped allowing free trials because too many people were abusing the free trial system. Basically, what was happening was people were going and creating a bunch of free Discord accounts, and they found a loophole to continually generate free images with Midjourney. So that's kind of in the news. A lot of people were using Midjourney for free, and now they're not going to be able to. Perplexity did release an iPhone app. I don't know, there's not a whole lot to talk about there. It's kind of a cool chat app that, is web connected, that I believe uses GPT technology plus web behind the scenes to work properly. I played around with it a little bit on my iPhone. I was pretty impressed with the results. You get pretty similar results with it to what you'd get if you were using Perplexity in your browser. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the rundown of what's been going on this week. I'm sure there's a few little things that I'm missing, but there hasn't been any, absolutely explosive, groundbreaking, insane advancements this week like there was the last couple weeks. I think, the biggest news of the moment is just this conversation about pausing, taking a step back, reevaluating the potential unintended consequences of what is being developed here. And yeah, that's really kind of the breakdown of the news from my perspective. Linus, Billawall, anything you'd want to add to that?
Are y'all happy that it's a chiller week? Because I'm pretty happy, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I
Oh
was
yeah.
just gonna
Oh yeah.
say, it feels kind of nice to be able to like catch up and just scroll through and see, Pope in a coat and like that
Yeah.
side of the internet this week. So it's been good. I wanted to ask if anyone knows that if Midjourney is going to be resuming the free subscriptions or free option anytime, because I know that in their announcements they said something like they're just temporarily suspending it. So wasn't sure if like there has been any status update or if it's still suspended right now.
Yeah, I wanted to see that too because I just looked at the website and they still have that free plan on there. So I didn't know. Did they start that yet? Do you know? Anybody?
I don't know. I am also, for one, very happy about a chill week. Actually, had some time to just actually cope with what's going on, so I'm super happy about that. I'm not sure if we can call maybe
Give me some of that copium, dude. Where's the copium? I need it. I need it.
yes. Um, I don't know if the letter is very chill though, but we'll get to that later. I think it's interesting. It's a lot of things to decompose there. But yeah, let's go, Heather. You got the
Well,
mic.
thank you. No, I appreciate it. No, I was asking about the Midjourney, the free tier. If they announced that they're going to eliminate it, or they're going to pause or stop it for a while, and I was just wondering, did it start
I
yet?
think
Or
it's still paused. They had some problems. I was at 10,000 sub bots or something like that. That was
oh
just
my,
like, yeah, it was crazy. I think they had to like cap the rooms, and then they completely took off the free trial.
oh,
But maybe it's coming back. I don't know. They have a lot of work to do there on how they manage stuff. But they are working on their new website a lot. They talked about that during the community day or office hours, and it looks like they're slowly kind of going away from Discord. So hopefully, in a few weeks, maybe that this is less of a problem.
oh, okay. Well, yeah, I guess we'll learn as we go by, as time goes on. Um, well, we were talking about the Perplexity app. Anything else that? What else? I
Wait,
can't remember.
can I
Yeah.
circle back to what you just said, Linus, about Midjourney potentially going away from Discord? Like, you mean that they would have a desktop or browser app?
Yeah, so they spoke about this during the office hours. They actually are working quite hard on the website at the moment. There is an alpha for generating images using the UI. There's a few people that have access to that. So, but they didn't say any dates or when we can assume that it will go live. But in the works. I think they've realized themselves that kind of Discord is the biggest a barrier of entry for them. So they could probably grow a lot faster if they had their own UI.
Big time. That's huge. I mean, I'm around a lot of creators and marketers and content creators all day, every day, and Discord is constantly the biggest barrier to entry because it's where do you create all of these cool images? Well, Midjourney or go figure out Stable. But
Oh,
good to
oh,
know.
but oh. So when we're talking about new shit, in this, actually, there's new stuff from Stable Diffusion as well. They released their new, updated tool, Dream Studio. Have you covered that, Matt?
I haven't covered the newest updated version of Dream Studio yet, but I do know that they've got their what is it, the Stable Diffusion XL now, that some of the XL models are available now. And also Ahmad just posted this morning on Twitter a picture of an image with text in it that was generated with AI saying that this is coming soon inside of Stable Diffusion XL. So it looks like pretty soon we're going to actually be able to generate actual text inside of our images that is coherent with Stable Diffusion XL as well. So that's that was just kind of a teaser. He didn't really give a whole lot of details on that. There is a way to play around with some of the next generation versions of what Stable Diffusion is working on. There's a little almost kind of like what Midjourney did, where you can say which image you like better between these two images, and there is a place that you can do that. I don't remember the URL off the top of my head. Linus might actually know it, but you can actually see some of the next generation images that Stable Diffusion is working on if you want to be a part of the voting of which image you like better.
Yeah, I think they just sneaked this out like in Dream Studio, the update like a few days ago. They haven't really said a lot of things about it. It's obviously like you said, Stable Diffusion XL, which is like I think 2.2 extra large. I love the like addition of extra large. Um, but yeah, I'm excited about that, and I think there's some other cool things coming from like Uizard, like the tool for designers to kind of auto generate
Oh,
app designs and website designs. I have had alpha access this week, so that's pretty interesting. Um, let's see if they need a few more weeks to polish that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these small things that are starting to pop up now after all these big news, and that's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting. I'm opening up Dream Studio right now. It says The SDXL models are currently available as preview only, and then will be open source later when training is complete. So I think, is this the first time Stability is sort of going with their own first party creation tool to kind of, beta test, alpha test the model, and then go about doing like a proper open source release? So that's kind of interesting and a new approach for
So
them.
you mean right now that what's in Dream Studio that you're generating that is not using that new, the SDXL?
No, it is. It's just usually they always do an open source release
Oh,
and then also Dream Studio. And so, it's kind of interesting. I mean, like I'm sure Stability is in a position where I would guess 90 something percent of people who use Stable Diffusion models probably don't use it in Dream Studio. And, this might be a nice way to just, test the model, but also, perhaps drive some usage to Dream Studio.
yeah, I started using it myself a few days ago because of that. But yeah, it's interesting images.
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quick because I opened this loop, so I want to close it. But there's a website called Pick a Pick. It's PICKAPIC.io. And that is supposedly where Stable Diffusion is kind of doing their testing and training. So if you want to get a sneak peek at some of their next gen models, that is the website where you can kind of go play around and generate some images, and then it asks you which image you like better, and it supposedly helps train the next generation of Stable Diffusion. So that's that website. I just wanted to mention it since I brought it up already.
One other little thing that happened 4 days ago is Gen 1 is finally more widely available, and sort of building off the Midjourney points. Initially, for the beta users, it was all in Discord, and so now you can go access it alongside all the other tools in Runway itself. And I just love it's far more intuitive of an interface. You can basically do the same thing, it's video to video, type in a text prompt, provide an image, but you kind of keep creating your own feed of different creations, and it's easier to jump back and forth, jump around without the sort of the chaos of a Discord chat. So exciting stuff there. I'm also super excited for Gen 2. But yeah, that also came out 4 days ago, and sort of amidst the conversations about, I don't know, bombing GPU clusters to, maybe a more lighter weight 6-month pause on training. Some of these smaller things might have just, slipped by us.
Yeah, I didn't realize I had Gen 1 access until I went to look at the Gen 2 things in Runway, and I noticed that was over there, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know. I missed it. But yeah, but it's still only the first 3 seconds you can that it will change, I think, for the video. So at least it kind of looks like it remains a still image, but I liked it. I really enjoyed that.
I love that somebody used ChatGPT to write a little like After Effects script that would just take your clip and break it up into 95 frame segments, so you could just run it all through Gen 1 and then splice it together later. I wish they do that. I feel like that's the natural next step. But maybe the temporal consistency sort of starts breaking apart after 3 seconds.
Yeah, I'm a bit
Yeah, the
surprised.
pace at Oh, sorry. I was just going to say the pace at what all this is moving at right now. It feels like to me the Gen 1 announcement was weeks ago, but I guess that was just earlier this week. And then earlier this week, they also mentioned Gen 2, which came around the same time that we got that version inside of Hugging Face that has the Shutterstock watermarks on it. And it looks kind of like the similar thing to that. So, those are some other things that I guess just kind of happened this week. But because of all the stuff that happened this month, it feels like all of that was so long ago.
I agree. Everything, yeah, it's kind of rolling together now. So, like, yeah, what else was supposed to be going on this week? And co-pilots and different things that were released. And oh man, it's crazy how many things. I guess everything happened already, so that we can just kind of talk about it for the rest of the year or the month, maybe. We'll see. But hold on. I'm trying to go through for everybody who's joined us since we started. Thank you again. This is Heather. I'm Heather Cooper, and this is our Friday Generative AI Space. And I'm joined with my panel, Billawal, Sadhu, Taylor. We have Linus Eckenstein here, Matt. Wolf, thank you so much for helping me moderate this. And we're going to go through, and for anybody, like for the microphones, what we'll end up doing is trying to like spread it around some for different people and trying to make sure we cover things. And if we're not familiar with who you are, we might not be able to give you the mic right away because we want to respect everybody's time and make sure we're probably going to try to keep it a little bit shorter today. I don't think we need a 2 hour call today, but we'll see. So we have so many mics, and if once we give them out, if I have to pull some from different people to give them to others, I will do that. And please, it's nothing against you. Thank you all so much for coming here to share your experience and knowledge about this space with generative AI, because we're just a growing community and we have so many different parts, different sectors that are involved with this, different people from different niches. Look around the room and see people that you might not have noticed before, and we're all here sharing. Follow these people, and let us know if you like something that we're saying. Show me with the emojis. Go ahead and hit the heart in the bottom right corner of your phone. I don't think you can do it from a desktop, but please, feel free to do that. You can request the mic, and like I said, I'll try to get it to you. Leave any comments or any links to things in the comments of this chat. Go ahead and we just do that there. You can plug yourself. You're allowed to do whatever you want there. Be respectful for everybody, and just wanted to give out a little bit of housekeeping there for that. So thank you all so much for coming again. Um, I'm going to go through and see. We want to talk about the pause next. The calls for a pause.
Yeah, can I just add too
Oh,
that
yes.
feel free to use those replies as well. Like if you have any questions, because I know we've got a limited number of mics that we can hand out. So if you're dying to ask something, or you're just not comfortable coming up to the space to the space stage to take a mic, feel free to throw those questions in the replies, and we'll get to them. And also, those replies are really helpful too, because after the space, it sort of the space is of course recorded. So after the space, it gives people some guidance on what the discussion was and some of those key pointers. It also lets people know whether or not they should click in and listen to the space if there's some chatter happening. So definitely appreciate any feedback, comments, questions, ideas, random AI things that you notice that we haven't talked about yet this week. Feel free to throw those in the chat box. But that's all I had to add.
Thanks, Taylor. I appreciate that. And that's a good point. Please utilize that. We have Max. Did you have something that you wanted to say related to what we were talking about? You have the mic.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for hosting this. I didn't know about it, so I just found out, but I will join the next weeks for sure. Thank you very much. I just want to add a little thing. There was a tool coming out this week called Kittle.ai, and it basically enables generative AI for vector images. So it spits out an SVG, and I think I haven't seen this before. So I've been using this quite a lot this week, and I really like it. And it has some other nice features like a background remover with some AI features. Yeah, just a little thing, but it's called Kittle.ai. Just wanted to leave it there.
Is that spelled Kittle?
Kittle.ai.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. That is a great tool. Thank
Yeah.
you. We can put that. I appreciate that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Drop a link in the thread, please. We would love
I
to.
will.
I think Adobe was one of the modules that isn't accessible in the beta right now is colorization of vector imagery. But gosh, obviously the next step is like, let's just get some SVGs
Yeah.
and drop them into Illustrator and start having a party. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
we were using it in the agency already this week for some real clients work. So it's a real use case from generative AI. I love it.
No, I thank you so much. That's very helpful. And Brian, did you have something you wanted to say? Thank you so much for coming. I think you have the mic now, Brian. Oh,
Oh,
there we go.
hey, thanks so much. This is my first time in here, and I'm not sure I have the same background as everybody else, but I've been, fascinated with the AI and using it in my personal work here recently. And I wanted to ask you first if it's appropriate that I'm a stock market guy, and does anyone in here have any interest in discussing some of the stock market opportunities as well in some of these names? If you look at AI this week, I mean, it's gone up about 50+%. And there's just, I think everyone in this room is a big believer in the technology and probably has better insight than certainly I have. And I just wanted to throw that out there and see if it's appropriate to discuss any of that.
Well, I think it probably depends on like how it would relate to. Right here, we mainly talk about AI in the sense of how content creation, using it for content creation, and for brand and different things like that for anybody. And there's people here from every background. There's developers, artists, designers, all kinds of people that are here. But in marketing, I'm not sure how you would use the I don't know. I don't know what to really talk about for the AI for the stock. So unless, just
Yeah, my interest, and I hope I wasn't talking over you, was just to see if anyone had any ideas of what are some of the companies that are kind of leading that might not be well known, that maybe there are great investment opportunities, and there's another opportunity to use this technology for enhancing our wealth so we can enjoy our lives more and do all the things we strive to work for.
Yeah, I don't have anything serious to add. I mean, generally, we tend to keep these spaces largely focused on creation and productivity applications. But I will say there's a lot of speculation of like, what are people doing with like the GPT-4 model without the trust and safety layer? Probably asking some very interesting questions. But even with the large language models that are available, people are doing interesting things. We're just like getting feedback on their like financial portfolio and trying to get stock tips and so forth. And so I have to imagine like there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff happening in the space, especially machine learning is already such a key part of high frequency trading and so forth. And I can only imagine what will happen when you've got these like massive models that can also act on news as it comes online, right? Like in split seconds, and make decisions about sentiment and so forth. So I think it's certainly interesting, but generally most of us are from more of a creation and productivity type background.
Yeah, understood 100%, and that's why I wanted to ask if it was appropriate. So I will go back to listen only mode.
Oh
Thanks
Brian,
for
no,
stopping
thank
by.
you so much. No, we don't mean to do sound like that, but no, I appreciate it. It's just, yeah, we're still covering. We're getting started now, so that's the only thing now. Trying to figure out how we would fit that in. But thank you. No, it's fine to ask the question. Thank you so much.
I
So,
actually want to add to that, Brian, and it's nice to see someone from finance here because I actually recorded a 1 hour podcast today with one of the largest trading firms here in Sweden. They had me on as a guest, and it was quite interesting. I think the outcome, just to synthesize an hour of talking to finance people, is that if you want to put your ship somewhere, and this is not financial advice, but if you look at what all the big companies are doing, they're basically buying NVIDIA hardware, and it doesn't really matter what sub company it is, everyone is using NVIDIA hardware to train. So if I want to leave you with anything, it's just look at
By
NVIDIA.
NVIDIA.
Well,
Yeah.
that's
Oh, yeah.
it's doubled this year, so that's thank you.
Hey,
It's
what do
fun.
you think is going to happen with AMD, by the way, on this note, right? Like, so I'm
Hedged.
pretty long on NVIDIA, got in early. Are they screwed or what's going to happen?
I'm hedging. So if we're talking about finance for 2 seconds, I'm hedging. So NVIDIA and AMD. But again, this is not financial advice.
I think even generally it's interesting, right? Like I think CUDA, even in the computer graphics world, NVIDIA tends to get a lot more love just because of like, CUDA, to be honest. And yeah, OpenCL is cool and all, but yeah, like it's funny. I will always buy AMD CPUs. I love me my Threadripper, but when it comes to the GPU, Jensen and his leather jacket gets all my money. And I guess like he keeps buying one new jacket every day with all the money that he's accumulating.
I think my favorite, all-time favorite business leader is Jensen Huang. There's just no one else that's so full-on great every single year. And the fact that he's so happy about selling stuff. You see that he goes on stage and he goes like, if you buy from Jensen, I'll sell you twice. It's like he just loves selling his hardware. I think it's so clear now they have dominance over the learning market. Like the fact that training market they got full dominance. Everyone is buying their hardware, full stop. So yeah, that's it on finance. Let's move on with the creative stuff. This was fun.
absolutely. And I know, Mint, did you have the mic? If you want to say anything, or digital. Thanks,
I,
Mint.
I was just gonna say, I love heating my house with my 3090 Ti. It's my favorite.
Heating
Uh,
your house? Yeah, maybe
don't.
if it's a cold San Francisco winter. I saw a tweet you moving to SF, so maybe you'll need it because it does get chilly in most
No
apartments.
one heats their house in San Francisco. I'm
Exactly.
calling out the whole city.
Exactly.
All your heaters are broken. No, but yeah, I'm just for those who I haven't been in a space with before. I'm a generative AI artist. I also work as head of customer success at Scenario, which does AI generated game assets. And I'm actually really missing San Francisco today. I left before I found out there's going to be this massive Gen AI meetup, and they decided it right as I was basically boarding a plane. I was like, oh no. So I'm sending a lot of love to that group today.
Yeah, hi, Mint. Nice to see you again. It's like we're best friends already on the internet. Yeah, I missed that meetup as well. There's going to be like 3,000 plus people. I'm so amazed by that. It can only happen in San Francisco, though.
That's why I'm moving there.
That's good.
That's so cool. Thank you. Yeah, you're out there having all the fun, man. All the little meetups and parties and socials that are happening. But thank you so much for spending some time with us because you are an amazing artist. Thank you so much. And Fidgetal, did you want to say something?
Yes, hi everyone. Can you hear me well?
Thanks for coming.
What up? What up?
Hi, hello. I guess I'll try to be sort of brief and short, but I feel like there is a fun update that would be useful to a lot of people, especially since I think it was last time or maybe the spaces before where we talked, and people asked a lot about different tools that relate to text to 3D or image to 3D, and there's just a lot of talk in general about how do you generate 3D, and obviously since that's the future and it's something that people are super excited to work with. There is a little fun update in Phygital that it would be amazing for folks to just try out. I guess it's definitely super beta experimental, but let me just briefly explain, and I'll also pin the tweet as well. So basically what we're kind of like in this middle phase where technically you wouldn't be able to generate any 3D, but it's something like a very fun shortcut for people to do so. So imagine if you take either a single simple character or like a little fun game asset. So what you can do with it, you can take a picture of it or you can generate an image of it, and then you're able to put it in Phygital and connect it to a node that's called rotate object, and that would allow you to generate different viewports to technically rotate it without actually having to create a 3D model or putting it into any 3D web software or generating any 3D mesh. So it's basically, I think it's a model that's based on stable diffusion that can just control the viewport of an image, but you don't really need to know any of that. Basically, all you need to do is if you have a simple object that you'd like to view from a different viewpoint, for example, it's a character, like you've generated a character in Midjourney, let's say, and you want to just see how it would look like from behind. So basically what you do, you just connect it to the node and you would put 180-degree rotation, and that would rotate and generate a couple examples for you. You can generate from 1 to 4 just to see how it might look like. So, it's not production ready. It's not something that you're able to turn into something that's super high res and super high quality, but you can always upscale it, obviously. But basically, it's just a fun tool for people who were wondering about AI and who are interested in game dev or prototyping, storyboarding, 3D scenes drafting, and stuff like that. It would just be a fun thing to try. And especially since that doesn't require any knowledge of any 3D software, it's all in the same canvas. Like I said, and also it's free, of course. So just wanted for people to know that this tool exists. It's based on 0, 1, 2, 3, I think it's called latent diffusion model. Might be confusing with, yeah, I think it's 0, 1, 2, 3 if you want to Google that and just learn more about how it's actually working, because I don't want to go into the technical details, and fairly enough, I don't really understand them. So yeah, it's just a fun thing for people to try out, free if you go to Phygital. And if you have any questions regarding how that works as well, you can always tag us or ask here, or probably better in DMs or just in comments. So yeah, thank you.
I love how Phygital, how you have the tutorials, or you have the instructions right there beside the each of the neural networks that you open up. That's so helpful, like step by step with images to show you exactly what to do, where to connect the nodes, and what to do next, and what you should go to, and even like the upscaling and that kind of stuff that's available through that. It's such a nice it's such a nice platform in Canvas. I really enjoy using Phygital Plus, and you guys, please don't leave it sitting there. There's so many things that they have on there. I don't know what 30, like 25, 30 neural networks with all kinds of different abilities. And then they also have the AI library that has tons of resources. There's educational, like tutorials and things like that there also. So not just the AI products, but they have a whole platform. And then they also have the creative, where you have the artists that are, a part of the platform that are creators for Digital Plus, right? Because I think a lot of people don't realize how you have, you do have other things that you go through where for creation and for different types of, there's like a marketplace or something like that for Digital Plus.
Yeah.
And I apologize.
It is, yes, so it is a library. And you're right, like there's so many things and the team is just so little that it's just physically super hard to communicate that there's 25 or maybe 27 neural networks in the canvas, in the workspace itself. And then there is a library where we put a lot of new AI tools and guides and educational materials and newsletters. So if you have a podcast or a newsletter or something of educational nature that you would like to put out there for people to discover and explore, definitely feel free to shoot us a DM or just visit the website and edit, because it's really great sometimes if somebody is looking for a very specific knowledge on something. Of course, people are going to search in maybe Twitter threads, but sometimes it's really great if it all exists in the library, and we'll obviously credit you. We'll put the links to your Twitter threads. It could be a Twitter thread as well. Like if you wrote something that's super valuable and it teaches people how to achieve something from A to Z, amazing. We would put it in a library as well.
That's how I found out about you, is from they used one of my images that I posted and put it in their library for Leapix, the Leapix converter. When I did it, and I had no idea who Phygital Plus was, but that was so cool. So yeah, they do like to use your, just to show a good example of how something works. I thought that was really cool, and thank you so much. So it's just a great resource that we have sitting there, and please take advantage of it. You can. Sarah, did you want to say something? I know I had you next, and then AP's here. Thank you for speaking.
Oh, Heather,
Sarah.
thank you for
Oh,
summoning
no
me.
problem. No, thank you.
I hope that everybody can hear me. It's just such a lovely thing on Friday afternoon to sit at the hemlines of such incredible, brilliant minds. I just take so many notes during this space. I feel like I know you all so well. You have become such integral parts of my pocket family. I mean, Bill, Linus, Mint, of course, Taylor, Matt, Fidgetal, and it's just been such a huge you've edified me in ways that you have no idea. You affect the lives of strangers. I just highly recommend all of the newsletters too. Heather, your newsletter is amazing. I think I come from a different point of view. I build maker spaces. I'm a traditional artist, and one of the things that I value about all the speakers, I see Vicky down there. I get to hold a space with her at 11 every day, and we get to kind of sum up what we've learned at your hemlines for the everyday person that is probably on the periphery. For me personally, I have a server that's set up in Discord just for disadvantaged children in Flint, Michigan. I teach a robotics team. And one of the things that we do is I have Midjourney in there, and they get to play around with these tools because it's inaccessible to so many people. And that is something that I kind of get a lump in my throat a little bit about, because you've all played a small role in helping equip, enable, and inspire the next generation. I feel very strongly that our youth, our young makers, our unconventional, non-traditional thinkers and doers need access to these tools, and they need someone to kind of Sherpa them, for lack of a better term, because our world is changing. We're at the crossroads of history, something just so incredible. I never thought in a million years that this would be during my lifetime, but yet here we are. I've waited 20 years for this, playing with AI and playing with emerging tech. To see what you are all creating is so inspirational. And people like Vicky, for instance, people who think that they were never creative on creating artwork that makes you tear up because it's so personal. And it's equipping them with the tools. People who normally didn't have a voice, they were voiceless, are now given a voice and the opportunity to create amazing things and be able to communicate with other people. It's so powerful, and it really is restoring our own humanity in the process. So I just wanted to say thank you. I can go back down to listening, but I can tell you, each and every one of you are such a gift. And the fact that your kindness and generosity in transferring your skills so willingly and open source is such a huge thing, because there are so many people that don't have access, and you are giving them a voice. So I hope you all smile today and continue going on to greatness. I'm just so proud of you.
Well, Sarah, after I finish crying, I will no, but thank you so much. You're so sweet. And I appreciate everything that you're doing, honestly, because I shouldn't be here by any other reason other than this technology. I'm not creative. I'm not an artist, a designer, or anything like that. So the fact that I can even be putting anything online that would inspire anybody is a testament to the power in the types of different avenues you can take with these types of technology, because there's so much out there. Just having a willpower, every day I figure out something different. Yesterday I was doing something on scenario. I created a whole nother world for a space journey or something. So I guess I better write a book or graphic novel, or maybe do a little movie. But I would have never thought that, like, even last week, that I would do something like that. But since I sat there and watched the story come to life as I generated images, I started thinking like, "Ooh, this will be good." But for the kids, this is so amazing. I have 4 kids, and that you're exactly right that this is the best way to help equip people and give them an opportunity to see that there are other paths available, and that you don't have to just go down one track. You don't just have to be a lawyer or a doctor or just computer science. You could be anything. You don't need to go to college. You just have the willpower to a willingness to learn is the best thing. And having access, and the more people we can give this information to and provide, and just to tell them where to find it. That's what this is all about.
Well, in maker spaces, we call it the maker mindset, right? It's the self initiative to learn. When we instill in young makers, now my children, all 4 of them, or 3 of my children, but the kids that we work with now are all hack schooled. So my 3 children are now moved on. But the thing is that we also forget the other flip side of the coin. By teaching them these tools now, we're also teaching them how to discern what is real and what isn't. The kind of AI that I've gotten to play with is terrifying in a lot of ways. But if we can help bring up the next generation to be cognizant of the things that they need to look out for, to be discerning, and also be discerning in the kind of art that they want to create. We don't want low effort. We want the best work. We give them our best tools. We expect their best work. And so as iron sharpens iron, we help build up that next generation. But the other thing too is, especially with the deep fakes, if you are working with young makers, make sure you have a safe word, especially as we scrape people's voices and have those kinds of images. Those are the kinds of talks that we need to have with them, because it's becoming more and more apparent that, we're creating some incredible things, but we also have to be aware, that with that incredible responsibility, we also have to make sure that they stay safe. So I'll go back down to listening. Thank you so much,
No,
Heather. I hope that you just go on to greatness. I wish I could give you a big
well,
old
no,
hug.
me
I just
too.
love
And
this.
please, before you go, I just wanted to say, we would love to support this effort, the Makerspace. Could you put in the comments, like more information?
Well, I build maker spaces all over the world. If you want to give money, I strongly recommend you find your first robotics teams in your local areas, that you invest in those kinds of kids. If you invest in your local maker spaces and hacker spaces, um, those are the kinds of things you start local. Don't send your money all over the place. Build your ecosystems locally. Help instill that. And if you don't have anything to give of yourself. If you're a machinist, if you like 3D printing, if you know graphic arts, give of your skills, your time, and your effort to transfer those skills to the next generation, because those are the kinds of things that they need to learn. And that adaptability in uncertain times, that would be my ask. I mean, my Flint robotics team is 322, but I strongly recommend that you find your local First Robotics. It's a .org. It's nonprofit, and invest in those kids, because they're all over the world. It's not just the United States. Those are kids that are in the STEM-based programs, and they're the ones that are going to need these tools more than anybody else here at the table, I think. So, yeah. Hey, Mint, I see your hand.
Yeah, hey, I'm so glad that you're sharing about that. I just think that it's really important. I agree to uh, make these tools available to all sorts of people all around the world. And I want to connect with you after this, because I feel like I'd love to get the scenario API in the hands of those kids, because it adds another level of playing with tools. And I love Midjourney. I use it every day, but I also love creating my own stuff too, and
Well,
I
if
think they
I'm
probably would.
if I'm letting you in on a little secret, I don't want to say it because it's a recorded space, but if you have a plugin that is available for Discord, we do have a lot of homework sessions, wink, wink, nod, nod, in Discord channels. And those are the best ways to be able to have, I know, I'm sorry, AP, but it's absolutely true. I mean, I have a subscription to Midjourney and all of these wonderful tools. And if I'm in a digital maker space so that other people can use those tools, I would, I'm just
I
telling you, those
got
are the
you.
best way to do it. So
I
I love
got
you,
you.
Mint. You
Yeah,
know exactly.
I'll shoot you a message. Or Dolmite, one of us. Okay.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much. Go ahead, AP. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no. I think it's really interesting too, like the accessibility that things like ChatGPT are providing. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize that it enables you to have like a personal tutor like on demand, right? Like things like writing code, things like that. Like it can take you through step by step, like spinning up your own environment, executing code in like Python, right? Like that's really powerful. Like, a traditional tutor can cost like $200 an hour, right? Like, if you're thinking about like people living paycheck to paycheck, um, that's huge, right? It's like, I mean, ChatGPT is free. If you want GPT-4, you can get it for $20 a month. So, yeah, it's just really interesting stuff that's happening on right now, and I applaud you on like definitely getting the youth like educated on this sort of things. Like Heather, we had this conversation. I think it was yesterday, right? Where it's like so
Yes.
important, especially in like these communities where, like where I come from, it's like a lot of there's not that many resources for like students to go out and learn, right? So it's like, how do you go back and just give like what you know? Like I think that's very important.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were talking about. And even you don't have to be, you just be an average, regular salary person, and it's still too expensive to get, at least in the US. For tutoring, it could be hundreds of dollars. You have to get packages for like, what, $1,500. I see Rob Funston here. I know he knows, with, teenage kids, how everything is a struggle, and how there's opportunity there for them to go on to Chat GPT and things like that, and help kind of cut that time down and give them the explanation for why things are wrong, what the answers could be, examples of how to write this, even for like MLA style, write the citations or something like that. like that. There's just all kinds of different things that are available with this technology. Thank you all for the people that do go out and try to give back to the community, and especially for the kids. Thank you so much for what you do, because they are everything. But I guess I'll probably, I know that we are going around, and I don't want to, it's 3:45. So I did want to, if we want to talk about the pause next, my
Oh
panel.
yeah.
Yeah, it might take a few minutes.
I think in a way Sarah set it up with the great power, great responsibility, kind of the close to her statements. I'm still just like, I definitely have a lump in my throat, probably will for the rest of the day. But thank you for those really kind words. All right, so the last topic for today, probably the biggest one, so we'll have some discussion. And definitely, like, folks, as we sort of lay out what the discussion has been, folks will have thoughts. Please definitely do feel free to request mics. As Heather mentioned previously, we got to keep it on topic. Otherwise, as y'all know, or for the new folks, we got Linus, our Swedish hammer, and that hammer falls really, really hard. Trust me. So not gonna mess around. So all right. So Matt, like, do you wanna tee it up for us, like the 6-month pause, the Gary Marcus letter, just sort of give everyone a lay of the land.
Yeah, sure. So earlier this week, a bunch of tech entrepreneurs, Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, Ahmad Mustak from Stability AI, a handful of engineers from companies like Meta and Google and Microsoft, they all signed this open letter saying that we should pause the progress of any AI technology that's more powerful than GPT-4 for at least 6 months, because we don't fully understand the unintended consequences of where this is all going. We don't, even the creators of this don't really understand what they're building right now. And we're kind of entering this scary territory, right? And then Gary Marcus, he put out a really interesting, thought-provoking article called AI Risk Does Not Equal AGI Risk. And basically, the premise of this article was essentially, we're not necessarily worried about Skynet. We're not worried about the AI robots taking over the earth and trying to destroy us all. That's not really what the concern should be. The concern should be, the sort of scammers and the hackers and the AI being pushed out before it's ready. Right? We've already seen this with things like Bing Chat, where Bing Chat was probably pushed out before it was totally ready. And then all these chats happened where it kind of went off the rails and started saying that it wished it was human and it fell in love with its users. And, everybody's seen all the crazy stories that have come out of Bing Chat now. Right? So his worry is more about the stuff getting pushed out a little bit too early, and then the scammers and hackers and all of the unethical use cases of this technology. For example, there was a story in the news within the last couple of weeks. I don't really know the exact timeline of when it happened, but somebody used a tool like 11 Labs to clone the voice of somebody. And then the person that they cloned the voice of, they then called that person's parents, told the parents that they had hit a pregnant woman with their car and he needed $5,000 to get out of a jam. And he used this person's fake voice using AI to scam that family out of $5,000 because the AI was so good that they couldn't differentiate it from his real voice, right? That's just one example, and that's not specifically related to GPT-4, but that's sort of the idea behind the Gary Marcus article, is that those types of things are happening with the AI and how quickly the AI is moving. And so he believes it should be slowed down for those reasons. And, there's all sorts of debate all over the internet about the real reasons behind this open letter that's being signed by all these people. And I tend to agree with some of the sentiment that everybody that signed it probably has different reasons for signing it, right? Ahmad, he mentioned on Twitter that he signed it because he doesn't believe that the compute power is out there strong enough to actually create something more powerful than GPT-4, and it won't be ready for 6 to 9 months. So what's the harm in signing something if we're not even technologically advanced enough to create what they're worried about yet, right? A lot of people speculate that Elon, who is working on some sort of other, more ethical, open AI type product, wants the pause because he wants to catch up, right? Some people are speculating that some of these companies like Google are out there and Meta are out there signing it because they want time to catch up to OpenAI, right? So there's all sorts of speculation about the motives behind this, but the letter itself presents it as, we don't know the unintended consequences. We should slow down until we do. So that's kind of the setup of the landscape, the environment. Maybe Billawal or Linus or AP, maybe one of you guys want to add to that. But from my perspective and everything I've read, that's kind of my view on it.
As always, you did a great job setting that. Mint, yeah, jump in, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely read the letter. I was, I think in this space we have to hold space for the amount of posturing that takes place. I mean, these are all startups. These are all companies that are trying to raise money, actively trying to raise money in the space, and that is something that can't be ignored. I mean, not everyone on that list. There are plenty of researchers and folks who I think probably do genuinely believe in not the AGI, but rather what you're saying, like this concern about people being taken advantage of. And I think that is a really valid concern. I don't think that's going to be stopped by stopping technology increase and technology like buildup. I think that is stopped by better a better culture around how we handle data, which still hasn't really come to the surface despite all of the concerns about data in terms of Gen AI image creation. That being said, I do think that what we're seeing is in part some real concerns that are trying to get heard in the best way they can, and also some really slick business tactics. Like it doesn't hurt anyone to. I mean, it hurts someone, but like trying to stop the biggest competitor, I mean, that's pretty transparent in my opinion.
Yeah, to add to that, I think, the letter we're talking about that was signed has actually even gotten criticism from other AI researchers saying that it doesn't go far enough. Like even Andrew Yang is on the record as saying that. But, I'd link an excerpt of this article right up top. Eliezer brought up a really interesting point, which is basically, hey, look, this is just not far enough. Well, the only solution is to shut it all down. And, we've talked about this in the past where you can, on two ends of the spectrum, you can treat AI like open source. If they're just a vast majority of good actors, they will, check and police the bad actors. And that's one way to go about doing things. And the other end of the spectrum is, this is like nuclear. You can't go open up like a nuclear enrichment facility, right? Like it's a very thoroughly regulated industry. So let's say that's the other extreme. And Eliezer, that's the position. This like really one of the luminaries in the AI research community saying that 6 months not far enough. Shut it all down, and goes and proposes extremely strict consequences for anyone who violates these anti-AI sanctions, including but not limited to the destruction of rogue data centers by airstrike. So, I think a lot of people had some interesting responses to, is that maybe a little too far if we're like, it feels like a science fiction movie where it's like, oh yeah, rogue data center spotted. Let's go bomb like this GPU cluster. And so like that's the other end of the extreme. So I'm curious to hear like where on the spectrum of like we have to keep this open source, progress is completely good, to hey, this is nuclear, we got to tightly put a clamp on this now while we can still put that hypothetical ceiling there. Sort of what Matt was saying about Imad's point, right? So curious to hear what other folks on the panel have to say about and where they fall on that spectrum, so to speak.
If I can go, if they're fine. I actually spoken about this a lot today, but in Swedish. My brain is a bit fried, but I think it's interesting because if we look at both Ilya Sutskever and what he said on some of his interviews, and Sam Altman and what he has written and what he has said in some interviews, it looks like from the inside, OpenAI actually want this to happen. They want the world to react, but then I'm not sure they know how to respond, as we've yet heard anything. What on the spectrum of either going nuclear or not giving a fuck, I think that there needs to be caution. we've seen these profound changes with GPT-4 only being out in the wild for about 2 weeks. And if we then try to fast forward with only GPT-4 and we give that to everyone on the planet and everyone knows about it and everyone gets good at using it, we have a hard time foreseeing what the consequences are. And I think I kind of sit in the camp of like, let's pause this big experiment for a bit and try to roll this out to everyone before we incrementally increase the power of this by another order of magnitude. Um, but I'm not sure. It's very complicated. Italy's response today was like it was interesting. You know, they're banning ChatGPT, but it's more over the privacy stuff. But it feels like that's just a cover because they don't really like it and it's threatening a lot of jobs. I think we're seeing kind of things unfold quite fast now. And I think erring on the side of caution, because like we don't want to, I mean, this is good technology. We want the technology to be around. So maybe that slow ramp up that Sam has spoken a lot about um, is actually slower than the current ramp up that we've had. Um, those are my thoughts right now, and they might change in the next couple of weeks depending on what happens next. But I guess the problem is that with the two things. So we have the alignment problem in general, where we have this model that works the equal way all over the world, but we can't even align humans to be on the same page. So it's interesting to think that we will ever be able to align a machine, and yeah, it just makes this whole thing so much more complicated um, when it comes to rollout and how fast and to who and when. And if we pause, and if one company don't pause, who gets to decide? Or if the West pauses their development and the East powers on, like then we're creating like geopolitical tension that's not good. We need to remove the tensions, not increase them. So yeah, I don't know. It's just a very super convoluted conversation and topic that's far beyond my pay grade.
I also tend to wonder too if there's a little bit of a separation between the motives of OpenAI and the motives of Microsoft, right? Because now OpenAI is really in the pockets of Microsoft, and OpenAI did start, as we've heard from Elon many times, and we've heard from Ahmad many times. It did start as an open source AI company, and now that it is a public company and Microsoft owns whatever 49% or whatever it is, I kind of get the impression that OpenAI's philosophy would probably be let's slow this down, let's think this through. Microsoft, on the other hand, aren't they the company that just fired their entire ethics department? So I feel like Microsoft and OpenAI, they're in bed together now, but they may not have the same exact philosophies on how to push forward with this.
Yeah, so one thing to keep in mind with the whole setup with OpenAI is that the not-for-profit is still in charge when it comes to voting rights, and there's a capex on, or like there's a capex gain on how much the for-profit company can actually make their investors. Um, so it would be interesting to see now with this pushback if the not-for-profit actually steps in and overrides the investors' wants, and um, the structure allows for it, but it comes down to the organ or the people that are actually in charge in the not-for-profit part of OpenAI.
I also am like fairly skeptical of the things that can't be seen. I'm a big proponent of open source, and I don't necessarily think that means that everything always, all the time should be open source. I do, or that, for example, open source isn't dangerous. I can see why open source can be incredibly dangerous for um, especially people who are, I mean, we already have people still falling for phishing scams and things like that. Like, these are, this is a very real concern. But at the same time, I'm also highly skeptical of corporate entities and of transparency. I'm skeptical of, you know, even when an AGI exists, will we see it? Like, will we know, like, will you and I and the people listening to this space actually even know that it exists? What will it look like? Like, these are real questions. And I don't for a second believe that that technology doesn't, not that technology, but technology far greater than what we're seeing doesn't already exist. And in that, on that side, I always try to like play the devil's advocate with myself and think, well, is this somehow protecting them from showing something to me as a consumer, as a world citizen, that I actually, you know, deserve to know about? And that's happened so many times in history. So I think, in fact, there should be, rather than slowing down, rather than companies deciding how things get slowed down for profit or not, we need more global organizations that are unbiased, third party organizations that do real checks, that really look at the ethical components, that we're not relying on their internal ethics team or the ethics lawyers that they hire. Like, that we're relying on people that aren't getting paid by the companies in question. And I think that's super important. I'm always an advocate of that.
I agree with you. I think people need to start even having a conversation about it outside of this area of Twitter, because there's so few people that actually know much about it. The most of the public won't even know what's been taken away from them or what was available, let alone to recognize the deep fakes and different things like that. So there's really no knowledge or discussion outside of just, oh, chat GPT passed this test, or they, got licensed or whatever, or the schools want to ban it, and jobs are thinking it's some, companies are thinking it's bad. They're not realizing all the different opportunities they could use it for in GPT technology, but they need to start talking about it in an intelligent way to let people know so that they can have a say so, and, not just let the companies just decide when it stops, because when will it go back? And I highly doubt that once the public has this much information available, we've never had this tool and this much power from information. Once they start closing that off, it'll be kind of a gatekeeper situation. I doubt that it'll be open access for everybody again. And most people won't even know what they missed out on in the opportunities that they had.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
this
that's
is
so
heading
true.
in two interesting directions. Sorry, Linus.
No, no, wait, go
I was
ahead, go
going to
ahead.
say, yeah, two interesting points that are coming up. One is like, you know, nation states, at least like the biggest nation states in the world, have had these type of capabilities, right? Like in prior disinfo campaigns, whatever, that stuff has probably been deployed. The fact that that capability is now at the edges of the nodes, right? Like, I think there's something really dangerous about that. And I do think it's like, I kind of liked Gary Marcus's letter. It's like, it's maybe an unpopular position, but honestly, a little bit like, I think the Eliezer, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's like, I think that's how you say it. But the like, let's not bomb GPU clusters, and that let's not like take such an extreme position. I think that's a little too nuts. But I think companies need time to put in place, some sort of a response to the type of disinfo that is going to get out there, right? Like, people are talking about fake GPT-3 generated reviews on Google Maps, for example. And like, other platforms are going to get inundated with this type of stuff, right? And maybe the big companies would be able to quickly hire an offshore team and start like coming up with mitigations and training discriminators. What about all the other small to medium sized businesses, right? Like, so I think like, if bad actors truly try to band together and create a network and use these tools for malicious intent, like, I think there are some really bad outcomes that could happen later this year, right? And at the same time, like, yeah, the vested interest point is such a good one. Like Matt talked about this, like, and I pinned this in the third tweet, I think, where Imad actually pulls out the excerpt from OpenAI, where OpenAI themselves are saying, hey, yeah, like GPT-4 is dope, but we also feel that training runs beyond a certain size, should be, the national authorities need to have visibility into stuff, into things like that, and have scrutiny. Well, I wonder who are the companies that are going to do bigger training runs than OpenAI. It's probably all of their competitors. So, I think there is something interesting there. But the underpinning, like, the problem in all of this, it's turning into this like sort of stock market war, right? Like, once you have a bunch of these like massive companies that are like incentivized to launch things quickly, that's when entire ethics teams get fired and so on and so forth with the Microsoft news and all of that. So all of that stuff is just so like, it's such a complex situation that, gosh, I'm all for innovation and pushing on stuff, but it does feel like some sort of a pause might actually be a good thing. And it's not like the capabilities today, like we've still exhausted all the permutations and combinations of the Lego bricks at our disposal. I don't think we've still done that. So maybe slightly pumping the brakes might be wise. But to close out, I want to go back to something Linus said about the GDPR, kind of debacle with ChatGPT, not being about the model and the disinfo potential, but more of like, the privacy issues and some of the data leaks that happened there. And Mint alluded to this last time too, for anyone who was around, when we were talking about the sensitivity our artist community, or I would say parts of the artist community, are feeling about training these models. Like, the era that preceded this AI one was the big data era. And sort of what's happening is, all right, like we digitized everything, Web 2 happened, big data happened. Now, whether it's social media companies or whether it's like, private companies, they've amassed a treasure trove, a vast amount of data. A lot of it is PII, but a lot of data about us in the world, right? And I think like the AI art generation thing is just the tip of the iceberg. That's the thing we see. And submerged beneath the ocean is this like massive like amount of like the amount of models that have been trained on both public and private data and privacy preserving ways is massive across all the major companies, right? And so I think like it's now that we finally have AI capabilities that can sort of extract the oil, like, or extract the, can distill out the crude oil and create like derived products. I think it's bringing to question like, holy crap, like, is this too much power? So those are a couple of thoughts and reactions I had to the conversation here. And yeah, you know what? Maybe pumping the brakes makes a little bit of sense.
I also think about the fact that I just watched a bunch of politicians in my country ask the TikTok CEO or whatever whether TikTok could access Wi-Fi, and so I do worry a little bit, not just about just general citizens, but also our politicians getting
Oh
tracked
Lord,
by.
that one was funny though.
It was funny, but did it not? Like how it just seems like that is
Terrifying.
a liability.
Heavily so. Can we change them all for AI instead?
Okay, Linus, that's the opposite of what you just said. Basically. But I think it's a fair point. We need politicians who are savvy about the technology that set policy and institutional framework. I think in this regard, China has a huge advantage. They've already like created a freaking, a synthetic media guideline, set like 6 or 7 months ago, right? Like I haven't seen anything like that in the
Well, yeah, you're
US.
not
And
going to either,
ostensibly,
and you know that. So, um, if that's what you're
gosh,
relying on, I'm frightened. And that's what I said,
fair
because
enough.
yeah, like the Wi-Fi. I mean, I haven't even been paying attention, but we already know that that's not going to happen. And who would speak to it if we don't have the average person knowing anything? They can't have an intelligent conversation about, or at least an informed conversation about this. So, I don't know who is going to be in charge of, or who's the right people, who's going to reopen everything, and who's going to make sure that it's safe for the public, let alone, I mean, they already knew pretty much what was going on when it was being developed, correct? So why now? If that's, I mean, I'm not saying why now, because of course I understand why. And I think if there's bad actors that are out there, that they've already got it, and it's not going to stop it now, for future development. Please go ahead, Linus.
I think this is what I meant also with when I said like what happens when we give the current technologies to everyone, when we can have an informed conversation with anyone that we meet on the street, just like we can about Google, right? Like you can pretty much query anyone about Google and they will be able to talk to you about it. But right now, if you talk to anyone about uh, GPT technology in general, whether it's being ChatGPT or something else, um, then I'd say 9 out of 10 don't know what you're talking about, or even 99 out of 100 don't even know what you're talking about. I feel that people have like seen stuff on the news, but very few people have had an aha moment and have an impact in their day-to-day life. We're in a very, very small bubble. And even on Twitter, the people that are interested in this field, even if there are a few 100,000, It's a very small bubble in general, but we've seen the power, and we're using it. We're harnessing the power of these tools. So I can actually empathize a lot with the people that are afraid. And then it's sad that like we have leaders that are, not so tech savvy, or actually not, I don't even know how to put a label on it, but they're plain dumb. Yeah, I, it is very, very scary because like it's moving so fast, and like every week that we learn more and we kind of use these tools more, there's just millions and millions of people that have never heard about it. And that gap is like the one thing that worries me. And I've said this many times on these calls, like I think my number one mission is to get everyone on board as fast as possible. Like if I could like copy my brain over to as many people as possible with the knowledge that I've gained on this, I would in an instant do it. Um, so I'm definitely sharing the worry of the people that are worried. But yeah, I want to be optimistic. I want to be like happy about this, but at the same time, we need to be able to hold two opposing thoughts in our mind at the same time. It can be both, can be exciting and exhilarating, and could be the next big thing for mankind. But we also need to be able to, in the same sentence, say, well, this is also dangerous. We need to take precautions. We need to be careful about how we deploy this into the world, because most people, to be frank, are not ready for it, and that's it. That's the truth.
That's a good point, and I see what you're saying, and I agree a lot. I agree with what you're saying, and the potential out there is frightening because it's so much available, and it's moving so fast, and it's already there. They already have the capability to do all these things, and their people probably are doing it. But yeah, it is frightening also that the general public seems to have just kind of moved on and forgotten about it, other than a few stories here and there, which is so. How are we ever going to bridge that gap? AP, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I know Hugging Face is working on some open source things to help with, at least on the image gen side, right? Like determine authentication and like verify that the photo is real. Because those are like important things that haven't necessarily like kept up to speed. Like the ethical AI portion hasn't really kept up to speed with like the progress of like, say like the quality of image generation that, now we're getting like that real looking outputs. So yeah, I think like entities like Hugging Face are definitely super important as well. Like, doing those hackathons around like ethical AI because, there's some really smart people in the community that I think really cares. And, there's a lot of that can be done on that front too. But yeah, I'm definitely like super optimistic about like the technology. Same thing as our conversation the other day, Heather. Like, it's easy to be pessimistic and like uh, negative about these things, but there's a lot of optimism I think that comes from it as well, right? Like we could potentially solve like some really difficult problems. Like, what about like how do we solve poverty, right? Like how do we determine like allocation of capital? Things that traditionally like elude people, maybe we can solve now. Figuring out things like the real estate crisis, like how do we make homes affordable to all, right? Like, so yeah, I'm definitely optimistic, and I think that humanity will figure it out. We'll all figure it out. But yeah.
No.
I got a question for y'all. Sorry, Heather. Hey, so the question is like, do y'all think certain types of models should be more regulated than others? Like I've been thinking about this, especially with AP's point about, how do you, detect synthetic media? And we've talked about this is going to basically turn into like the way people like, patch vulnerabilities and 0-day exploits, and like, every platform is going to need to like keep patching this stuff, and training new discriminators to identify synthetic content. But in the grand scheme of things, it feels like to me these sort of text to image or whatever image generation models more broadly, doesn't even matter if it's like diffusion based or whatever, in totality probably have less downside than these sort of general purpose GPT-4 like models, especially once you add in multimodality, right? When it can like act on text and image input and do things like, if you get, if you're a hacker trying to do, wild things with these type of models, especially the like, especially once there's like, the stable diffusion equivalent of an LLM model, right? Like the stuff people are doing with Llama, you can get some really, wild, and you can do some very nefarious things with it. So in the grand scheme of things, to me, it's like the image generation models are less of a problem. So like leave those going. Yes, like we should train like discriminators to identify synthetic content, but it's really, I GPT-4 is at that cusp where, like, Linus, we were talking about disposable apps, right? If you're a hacker, making disposable widgets and like scripts at the edge to like do crazy stuff, if you get access to somebody's credentials, you can like, the scale at which you can do harm is now suddenly amplified. And so something about that worries me more, but I'm curious, do y'all feel that way too, or is it all the same?
I don't think it's.
I go mint, go.
Oh, I think that, I was actually talking to a friend recently who builds models and like from the ground up, and we were talking about this exact issue, and we both pretty much agreed, like, image gen is impressive, it's cool, it is nowhere near as intelligent, in quotes, to as like an LLM or some of these algorithms we have. It is like basically a blunt tool in comparison. It's like comparing like an old sword to a handgun. It's like these tools are catching up to each other, but the difference is so profound. And the fact that we can even talk about like open source hacking, the ability to tell if this is a real image or not, how would you do that with language? Like, especially when there are stories, from some inside some of these big companies, and I won't say who they are because the stories were sort of told to me in confidence, and I don't want to get into all of that, but like stories of like LMs learning things from just being suggested that something could exist, like that a concept could exist. It wasn't ever exposed to the concept at hand. It just was told, what if you could do this concept that's real, but we haven't taught you. And it just was like, yeah, you would do it like that. It's like that type of stuff's incredibly eerie. And I would also say image models don't like reason. Like there's so many different levels of like, I don't know if we would call language learning models like active reasoning, but it does something that looks a lot more like reasoning to humans. Sorry, there are sirens outside.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think back to the Billowall and what we talked about before with these LMMs knowing how to code and obviously getting better at it. And it's not just for me. I'm kind of like self-destructing. Like, yeah, the single-use self-destructing app is something I'm kind of losing sleep over, because it's such a mind-bending scenario that it's really hard to comprehend. Like the scale of which you can do both good and harm. Um, I think what's hard to grasp is the fact that we know that there's like potential like 100x upside on anything that we do with these tools, but it feels like there's also like 100x upside on doing bad stuff. And I just don't want to believe that the tool will bring out more bad actors just because it's easier to do bad stuff. But then on the other hand, this is what happens usually when it becomes easier to do bad things. Then the rate of people doing bad things actually increases slightly. And then if the potential upside is 100x, we're going to see a lot more bad stuff happening. And I think the 11 Labs cloning voice thing is just like the very, very tip of the iceberg, because you can do this at scale, like programmatically, not just like spoofing people a one-off, like manually. No. Like we're talking large scale, like spinning off botnets, subnets. Like you can have a hacker group of 10 people executing 100,000 or 200,000 or a million scams easily, like no questions asked, like really easy. And this is what scares me. I think the fact that it becomes so easy to do these cool things that we're seeing people do also brings the downside of it being easy to do bad things. And let's be fair, the world is a pretty big and nuanced and an ugly place sometimes. So I think it's, yeah, again, back to what we've been speaking about. Should we put the brakes on or not? Like, I think we should tread cautiously and we should have this debate. And just having this conversation, I think, for many people opens up different ways of thinking about these tools, and maybe can spark ideas or like ways to think about it, or ways to kind of be vocal in your sphere and your community about these things, and ultimately to the local people that are deciding, or people on national level that are deciding. Because like, yeah, I think that's what we need to do. Sorry for rambling, but it's such a big and strange topic.
Yeah, I agree with
If I
what you're
can,
saying. But go ahead, Mint.
uh, I was just going to add one last thing about the image gen models. Although I think that they're far less advanced and far less able to do some of these like higher level concerns. We're concerned about people being tricked, but not about the image model like going rogue and taking over the internet or something. But like, what I think is actually a huge advantage to this whole conversation about them is that I think the reason data was allowed to get farmed the way it did before is because people didn't see themselves in it, except if you were in very specific situations, like the sex work industry and stuff like that. They've been talking about data corruption for a really long time, but we just haven't been listening because we didn't take it very seriously. But uh, with the image models, suddenly I think that it's one of the few avenues where people are actually really taking seriously the data use conversation. I think that's very important. I think that's good. And I think it may be a saving grace in all of this because those artists haven't lost their momentum. Nor have the people who see themselves in the data set. That is disconcerting when you're able to find your face in a data set. It's very different than finding your voice or your writing in a data set. It's that like your face is so much more your identity to the majority of people than anything else. So I do think that just, I won't ramble too long, but I think that that is where, while Gen AI image generative tools are perhaps like significantly dumber in terms of intelligence, the disruption they've caused is a huge benefit to like a broader culture.
That's a good point, Mint, because yesterday I was listening to a space and they brought up the point with like justice and the predictive justice type of ways that they've been using AI, and the different ways, like your insurance companies to figure out your risk. These companies have been using AI to figure out these different ways to determine if somebody is going to commit a crime, or for sentencing, to help them. That's what the case they were talking about, and that was in 2013 in the U.S. And it was kind of like Minority Report coming to life, the movie where you do pre-crime. We already have that happening, but people weren't paying attention until, as you said, when they see themselves and they see images, then becomes a little bit more easy to understand and to think about how it impacts you. But meanwhile, those types of models that they're using, those algorithms that they're using for those things, they're going to continue using that, whether or not they put the brakes on the new research and development for faster and more powerful the images. I wanted to know. I know that Midjourney 5, like version 5, that's how we're able to get. Didn't they take away the ability to have people's faces, or like the celebrities? I thought for a while we couldn't get that. So why did they put that back in for version 5? But I know they took out a lot of, they had to ban a lot of words like chess. I think I listened to the call for a little bit. The live call, Matt, if you were on there, they banned some words, but then now you can use the actual likeness of a lot of famous people. And I thought that was the issue before. It seems like that kind of thing, it helps with deep fakes and trying to figure out if the image is real or not. Why are we able to see everybody clearly now? Does anybody know that?
I don't know why they added it back. I know that usually they remove stuff because of moderation concerns more so than anything. It's usually a way to like balance out the load that their moderators have to take. Sometimes, especially if there are like big events that are happening and people start prompting a specific word in a way that could be like trolling, they'll ban something for like even a short period of time just to like ease the weight on their moderators. What I will say is I'm active in the Gen AI space and part of a company that does a lot with Gen AI for images. And I really am super opposed, and I want to take this chance to say I'm super opposed to using real people's faces and names. I don't care if they're a celebrity or not in prompting. I know people use it all the time. I just want to take this opportunity on the record to say I'm against it. I think it's weird and creepy.
But the memes, man, how will we make the memes?
Or be more creative about your memes.
I
All
don't
right,
feel
fair,
comfortable
fair point.
using them either. I just don't. I can't because yeah, that's true. Maybe it's not you today, but yeah, I don't like using people's information.
Yeah, but imagine, we're feeling so sensitive about using, a well-imaged celebrity's likeness and potentially creating imagery that could be misconstrued as them, right? Like sort of democratizing deepfakes, if you will. On the other hand, the kind of stuff you can do with models, of GPT-4 class, like, it's so clearly everyone on this panel takes a far more moderate position, right? Like none of us are saying like, yo, like open source, everything will solve itself. And certainly we're not advocating for bombing, rogue GPU clusters. But I am building, especially Linus, after what you said, building some empathy about like, you know, why Eliezer might be advocating for the position of like, hey, the only way to stop this is pause it, right? Like if we think about over time, okay, so massive GPU clusters, over time with efficiencies in algorithms, the way we do training, that like ceiling is going to get lower and lower, right? And so like at some point, I think even Peter Thiel mentioned this in some interview, saying like, well, at some point you really can't police this unless you have like surveillance on every goddamn device, right? And so, I guess we all use like Microsoft products and like, freaking Apple products. It'll have to be at an OS level that you'll have to prevent somebody from typing in the code to potentially create a rogue AI. And that just seems like the most like 1984 dystopian possible outcome that could possibly happen, right? But then again, like if we can't imagine what all the downsides are, right? Like, so we imagine this Twitter feed every day. We encounter stuff that people are doing, which sure would like, diffusion image generation models or, text generation models. And we're like, holy crap, I didn't know you could do that. And then I just imagine like, like again, tip of the iceberg. We're seeing like the glossy tip submerged beneath the ocean, all the nefarious things you can do, right? Like all the collection of things and people every day figuring out new things that you can do. And then you multiply that with when LLMs are truly uncapped, open source, and accessible. And then that starts scaring me and helps me at least develop some empathy for Eliezer's perspective. Yeah, Linus, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I think I agree to a lot of that, and maybe also to add is like we're not. I think no one is saying like put this technology back into the box and close it and never open it again. So maybe I know you didn't say that, but I think maybe we could just make that clear. Um, but we are saying that like maybe just be a bit more cautious in how we deploy this, because like all the things that you mentioned, models running on the edge, which they are by the way already doing, will happen, and at that point it will be impossible to police. Not like it won't be possible, and to not end up in that place too fast from today, like I think having the cautious approach might be the only sensible way to go, because now we can police it. We're in a position where it can be policed slightly, but no one knows for how long. And I think that's the concern. I think that's the grounded concern for me, that the base kind of like problem. And maybe that's what OpenAI also is saying in all their kind of communication and post. It's like we're trying to go slow, but we're putting things out there. We're shipping like a startup, but maybe they've underestimated the slow as well. Maybe this is too fast. Yeah, so that's my thoughts.
Yeah, Taylor or Mitt, go for it.
I just want to add a remark on, how fascinating and interesting that we're at, like, we've sort of arrived at this like precipice, this intersection where this space is moving so far into mainstream. I was reading something by Ryan Broderick. He writes Garbage Day, which is an awesome newsletter on just internet culture in general. And he had a piece this week on the Pope in the coat, and it's like really an inflection point, because in many ways that was like the first like mass social hysteria over AI fraud, at least at a meme level, if you could say. but
Drippy Pope, let's
but so
go.
many people were fooled by the Pope in his puffy Balenciaga coat. Someone should pin that up here. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure you have if you're in AI Twitter at all. But I think that's like, it's interesting that it took to this point, and now of course this week as well we had this open letter come out, and I think it's just, it's interesting that like we've been talking about this point for so long, and we've kind of arrived to of this precipice of like, here is the ultimatum: either halt the brakes or not, keep going. But and
Taylor,
I'll
I'm sorry. I just
yeah,
want to ask, can
go ahead.
everybody hear Taylor? Mint said that she couldn't hear you. So I was wondering if
Yeah,
everybody
yeah,
can hear.
it's clear.
Okay.
I know my
I didn't
I'm
mean to.
rugging. I'm sorry if I'm rugging.
No, 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 no. It's okay.
I'll
She
just
was
reconnect
saying, I
again
just
real
wanted to make
fast.
sure
Go.
it wasn't like a something. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, yeah. I mean, I just to throw a wrench into things, I think that while this, this vision of halting all progress is like, it's a very idealistic and almost like utopian vision for what I would love to happen. I definitely think that there needs to be standardization and regulated protocol across the board, but I also think it's kind of unrealistic. I think that it's safe to say that a lot of these signatories, while they have great intentions that are maybe arguably with Google and Microsoft, but I think I think that we would be like idiots to think that these firms would also like remotely slow down on this hype train. So that's my thoughts. I'll pass it over to Mint.
Here, I think we need to let her
Oh,
back
wait, yeah,
on.
I'll
Here,
put her
here
back
we go.
here.
There we go. Here we go. Mint, welcome back.
Mint, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry
Okay.
about that before. Um, yeah, I do have one thought, or apparently a lot of thoughts, but one new thought, which is that like I I feel like we always hear these like really like the extremes. It's like halt all action, bomb rogue sites, like all this stuff, when it's like, we have an FDA in the United States, so like there are things that are regulated. Like we regulate drugs, we like pharmaceuticals, we regulate food. You can't like have a cow and like have milk and just like give it to people for money. Like it's not allowed because you'll kill people. Like potentially they'll get botulism. Like there are a lot of things that are this middle of the road, like boringly regulated things that I think like just, we see China doing this, we see other countries doing this. I think that some of the Western countries do kind of just need to catch up on that and come up with boring bureaucratic systems that regulate AI in a way that's, not stopping everything, not like militarizing or weaponizing things, but rather approaching it in a very like rational, systematic way.
I feel like, Mint, you're almost advocating for a pause with that argument, because I think that's exactly the reason people are saying, at least the moderate position being like a 6-month pause so we can just figure this, forgive my French, out. It's like basically like the differences between the FDA and all these other things, right? It's like we had so much time to put policy and institutional framework and governing bodies in place. The rate of innovation, like, I mean, just the last two spaces we had, we were ourselves were freaking overwhelmed. And we were basically summarizing the stuff happening in the creative AI space, like all the other stuff. And like as Linus and I were talking about, like the submerged part of the iceberg, we don't even see, of all the nefarious use cases that pop up every day. I think if you consider that in totality, then it almost makes sense, like why, yes, we do need good policy and institutional framework. Let's pump the brakes a little bit so that we can
I'm
figure it
just
out.
kind of a cynic though. Like that's the thing. I think like yeah, I'm open to a pause. I think I'm actually moderate about the pause in that I'm like, well, sure, we can say there's going to be a pause, but until there's these governing bodies, no one's going to pause. So like what are we even talking about? Like the pause to me felt like that pause letter felt like a posture. It felt very political, like very like capitalist political. It felt like very, very much a business decision. It didn't feel earnest like pause from advocates. I kind of laughed at it because I was like, okay, like yeah, I see why there should be a pause. I respect what I respect a lot of the people on this list and why they're probably doing this, but it's it's a little bit like a celebrity show at a certain point as well. There's folks on that list who are like disappear for months at a time and come back to like drop some statement about AI and then disappear again. Like it's like, okay, but the reality is that yeah, governing bodies should step in. We should probably have better politicians for like a lot of reasons. It's not going to happen very quickly. We know that it'll take probably at least 3 to 5 years because that's how quickly any of the companies, or not companies, any of the countries take in the Western world. But on the flip side, I really do think that companies are just going to take advantage of that time. I think they always have. We live in a capitalist system. They basically are indebted to their investors to do that until it becomes illegal. So like that's another big piece of this. So yeah, that's my perspective.
I agree with you on that, Mint, because it's hard to take it seriously, and it's hard to believe that it's all just for our own good and it's for the welfare of the nation and for the world. When you have the people that did come out and they very rarely speaking up about this topic. So I think, yeah, once it's gone or once we pause, it'll be very difficult to find out when it's back available, or what kind of analyses they were conducting to see whether or not it's effective, in that they have some kind of way to control it or to make it safer. I don't know who would be in charge of that. And that's the scary issue.
Yeah, I'm just sort of like, Elon, if you're listening, I know you don't care about what goes on in my life. I know you don't care how I'm affected by this. We both know this. Let's stop pretending. We're both here for it. I'm not codependent about this. This is, my message to you, Elon.
Damn. That's pretty funny though. Like yeah, it's a tough one, right? Like, and I think even if you decide to take the moderate position, even figuring out what happens there is such a fascinating point. Yeah, like it is currently the larger, multinational corporations that do have the funds, and probably, obviously nation states to do these like really massive training runs and build models. And then, yeah, like in 6 months, getting something in place where, there's strict oversight on everything that's happening in every corner of the world. Like that's how things slide towards like pervasive surveillance. And so that's the future I probably worry about the most. We do want to get some mics up here, and talk about this like rather philosophical topic to end out this Friday. So, again, like if we boot you, please don't be offended. We just want to keep things on track, keep things going. So Sephi, come on up. I see you're connecting. What do you got to say?
Hey, I kind of got lost in the middle of the connection there. Did you call on me?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Cool. No, just wanted to know, like, you guys understand kind of like this moratorium thing and what they're asking governments or whoever to do. I'm kind of with Mint as far as like absolute 100% cynicism that anything useful can particularly come of that. I think the reason for them doing it is more to sort of like grab the attention of the public and the government at this moment than any sort of like, like you're going to achieve some sort of success. So you had mentioned regulatory agencies. I work with people like the FDA. I work with people in like academic circles in terms of research. And what you'll find is like the number of people that are even talented enough to do, say, for example, like medical research, which this is very similar to, and I'll point this out, like why. But like even the number of people that can do that really well is like less than 0.1% of the population. Because how do I know? Because that's the people that like I hire. It's the people that I train, I teach, and all of that. So the number of people that are very good at this sort of thing is small. What you have built with GPT and large models is a massive neural network with no technology has been developed for interpretation of what happens to all those zeros and ones floating around millions of GPUs. So you get the interesting shit that goes in, then you have the interesting shit that comes out, but nobody really knows exactly what's happening in the middle of it. And to do studies on something like that would be very, very akin to like the best example would be like psychiatry studies. So when we create a drug for like depression or like schizophrenia or something like that, right? You've got to take like 1,000 patients on the one hand who you're giving the drug to, and 1,000 on the other hand that you're giving placebo to. And then you kind of see like, okay, what statistically significant side effects are present? What are the significant like outcome benefits you're actually looking for? Is it improved mood? Is it like less voices in your head? Whatever, right? Like you're looking for objectives, and those objectives have to be clearly defined. And then the side effects you can only also recognize in a placebo-controlled, randomized controlled trial. The problem we have here is we have a life form, essentially, if you think about it, the way that these things behave. The complexity is very similar to like a brain, but maybe more in some ways. And what you're trying to do is take an N of one, which would be like one patient. Imagine testing a drug on one patient. Like I give you a schizophrenia pill that I invented in my garage, and I'm like, here you go, see what happens. What's going to happen is, well, maybe something happens, maybe it doesn't. But the problem is like you can't identify like the like real effectiveness and do the statistics necessary for that. That's why we have like the FDA to make sure that like if a new drug gets created, an intervention has like proof that it works before releasing it on in too many people, right? So the regulatory environment like is not possible to create for AI in the way that people think it is, because in very complex systems, the statistics require randomized control studies to actually prove an effect and a cause. And if you don't have causality, you can't actually figure out what the solution to the problem is to fix it. So you get into a cyclical loop. The other thing is, if you look at how long randomized controlled trials last for like a drug as an example, even when we know how to design the damn things, it takes us years and nowadays billions of dollars to complete a study for one drug for one thing, right? Like, so if you talk about this, you're talking about starting from scratch on essentially what is essentially an alien mind. You don't know like even the first things about what your objectives are. We can't even all like agree on what the objectives are for the damn thing, much less figuring out what to study for it. And I think it'll all just be too late. So I'm sort of with the crowd that says, well, we're so like Pandora's box is opened. This whole thing is like in the wild. And I believe personally that this is a cultural significance as deep as money and God. Like this is one of the most important inventions ever. Not just GPT, but just all of the various models, diffusion, you name it, right? All the stuff you guys have been playing with. All of that is like a really, really exponential takeoff. And the human race is simply not prepared for any little bit of it, not on a psychological level, a cultural level, a philosophical level. I think religions are going to freak out once they really sort this out, because all of us here are like serious early adopters, right? Like we're just screwing around, we're playing on the art stuff, we're doing our music, we're playing with these things that we're considering more like tools, but we're not treating it like you would a life form or like a growing baby or something like that, right? Like people are feeding all sorts of nonsense into it. And so like, yeah, I think in some ways it's too late in many ways, and hopefully we get lucky and over the next 10, 15 years, like we don't kill ourselves. But I'm pretty pessimistic about the whole thing as a person who deals with psychology and medical problems and complicated technologies and studies things like that. And anyway, so that's kind of my take.
Could I ask you a really interesting take and
Sure.
love the analogies? What is your take on the best path forward?
Man, I've been thinking about this for quite some time. I've got kids in college. I've got like entire careers of entire cadres of people that like are on the line based on what these things do and don't do. So on the one hand, I'm like as curious as you guys are, like screwing around with these things, figuring out how it can like make my life easier, make work easier, how it's going to displace certain parts of what I do. How do I train cadres of doctors to use this sort of thing? Like all of that, right? So I'm stuck in the same way you guys are, in the sense that like I'm not gigabrain enough, and I don't think very many people are, including in the tech space, to sort out what the hell to do. And Nick Bostrom and everybody else that's been writing about this for years, by the way, forget about a 6-month moratorium. Like we've had like an understanding of how fucked up this is going to be since Isaac Asimov, like Robert Heinlein, like authors dating back 50 years have not been able to figure out what the hell to do philosophically. The idea that we're going to sort this out in 6 months, I'm scratching my head going, Jesus Christ, here we are. We're at this precipice, and Elon's pretty pessimistic about it. If you ever like every tweet he's ever had, like is pessimistic. OpenAI, like what's his name? Sam Altman is like doing a world tour so that people don't lynch him when everything goes bad. like he doesn't want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, obviously, because everyone hates Zuck, everyone hates Bill Gates, right? Like Sam's like, well, fuck, I'm in this and like situation. I don't think anyone knows what to do, including any of us and anybody on this planet. Like knows what to do. Like I haven't heard a cogent argument yet, not one in the entire like history of the human race, not one paper, nothing that even gets close to solving any of this. And I'm like scratching my head. And you know, the politicians, they're still worried about the banking crisis. You've literally had a meteor strike this planet, and money is our biggest concern at the moment. It's not even close. Like the entire planet is about to shift on its axis, right? Like, so I'm deeply concerned. Like, I don't know what to tell my kids. I don't know what to tell my coworkers. There's a lot about to happen, and you guys all who have played with this stuff know it's about to happen, right? Like, the shit's gonna roll downhill fast.
Yeah, you brought up a good point too, about the governments and how slow they move. That's another thing. If they're involved at all, you might as well add on another 6 months to a year to whatever the timeline is, because they're going to have to go through the process of having the hearings or whatever, the fact finding missions. And by then, there's all who knows what could be out there when we could have
One of the
used that time
reasons
wisely.
One of the reasons I'm deeply pessimistic is because we've seen how poorly the people in government have understood crypto, for example. Like a damn decade has gone by and nobody knows what the Bitcoin white paper is and what it means. Like it's like 6 people in Congress or whatever. And so like this like AI is orders of magnitude more difficult to explain to a person. I could do a seminar for a day on this and I still won't get done. You know
Even
what I mean?
TikTok
Yeah.
is like an enigma. So yeah, we're going over that for how many years now, and whatever is happening with that too. Yeah, TikTok, Wi-Fi in general, anything, let alone, it doesn't take much.
Should we just drop 5G in the mix?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
the
that was
metaverse.
isn't that the Illuminati? So yeah,
so,
go ahead.
so I just want to
Uh,
react like Sefi, how do I say that?
Yeah, you got it. It's
Okay,
Cephii.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with your pessimistic standpoint to some degree. I choose to be optimistic just because it makes my life
Uh,
and sleep.
and by the way, I'm a techno optimist. By the way, I've been in tech since like we had like home PCs and before the like. I'm kind of older, so like I've been through all of it, the entire arc, and I freaking love tech. I buy every new thing. I like to play with shit, program things, you name it, right? So I am like I have historically been an ultra techno optimist, and this bothers me the most of anything I've ever seen, like period,
Yeah,
right? Like
I think this is why I started to go into the space because why I got started because it was because for the first time ever, and I've been in tech for about 20 years, and for the first time ever, I got equally scared and fired up at the same time. And my response, my flight or fight response was to kind of like, I need to learn as much about this as I can, as fast as possible, and share it with as many people as possible before it's too late. So I can agree with your pessimistic standpoint, but I do still, however, choose to be optimistic about the outcome. But it's, but it's,
But you know what's interesting though? What should worry all of you is like if you've ever like look if you think about like the Apollo moon landing, right? Or let's say I don't know if you guys remember when Steve Jobs brought the iPhone out, back in like 2006 or whatever, and he like shows up and everyone applauses and everyone's excited. Look at that cool thing, right? Like every other major achievement, like in human history, outside of maybe nuclear bombs, like people cheered and like were excited, and here everybody in the space is like depressed right now. That's really worrisome to me. Like all the founders are like really hush hush, right? They're not wanting to say too much because they don't want to be strung up like by the public.
yeah, I think that's
Like
the problem. I think
this is
that's the
different.
problem. I think we haven't really figured out. The thing is, we haven't figured out this technology. All the other stuff that came before this was pretty easy to figure out. Faster phone, landing on the moon, pretty easy stuff to swallow. This stuff goes beyond our, even simple line of thinking. Like we can't even think. We can't compute because it's like the change itself is exponential. The outputs that we're seeing are on the order of magnitudes like 100x, 1,000x better than what we had before. So our kind of like brains are not really wired to understand what's going on. And then because I spoke about this a few weeks ago, but the convergence of all these things happening at once makes it even more of a perfect storm to be even more thrown out under the bus. So if you spoke briefly about Nick Bostrom, for example. I mean, Nick has been been advocating for what happens to us when computer gets smarter than us for like the past 20 years. Like a great Swedish philosopher.
Right.
Like
It's not like this idea is not new.
no,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's
No,
not.
I'm
But
literally
nobody
like
paid attention
I'm
because
50 minutes
it
from Nick.
wasn't in the public space, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like it wasn't like you had it. Like it was one thing to theorize about it, these things coming. It's another thing to be watching it happen,
Yeah.
right? I've been reading sci-fi since before like the PC was invented, right? Like so, like this is something that's been talked about forever. But now when it's staring you in the face, you're like, holy shit, it's here. And I have no idea. Like none of those 30 plus years of watching this, have prepared my mind for this situation.
Yeah, I can totally
So
empathize with
if
that.
that's the case with you and me, Linus, who are like technophiles, right? Imagine the rest of the world who is not a technophile.
Yeah,
Like,
and the thing is, what's interesting here is that most people, they don't see the bad stuff, right? If you show this to non-technical people, they choose to see the good stuff, and I think this is interesting because we as technophiles, we have this innate ability to see the good and the bad, but I'm only seeing mainly positive things from people that are not interested in tech in general. But yeah, I'm obviously super concerned, so I share that part. But it's interesting that both Max Tegmark and Nick Bostrom, probably the two most interesting people to follow in this space, are both Swedish and have been banging on this like hypothetical drum for 20 plus years. So it's interesting that they're now in the limelight, and they kind of like, actually the stuff that they had hoped and not would happen is actually at the doorstep. So it's going to be interesting to see in the next few months what they cook up, what they come up with.
GM Joe, you had your hand up for a while. I just wanted to give you a chance to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. Can you hear me okay?
No problem.
yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for hosting this space. I love this space. Always something to look forward to on a Friday. Yeah, Cecil, to your point, I totally get it, right? Governments have struggled to understand and definitely adopting blockchain technology for their purposes, but I also think that's because blockchain doesn't really solve like fundamental challenges in government, and that's why it's like struggle to both like understand it and adopt it, right, and embrace it. I think that AI is going to be a lot different, even though there's a lot of obviously red flags, and with this letter coming out, I think it kind of puts government at all levels across the world on notice a little bit. But I think that once like education does happen, and legislators, from small towns, from your small towns to your federal governments, I think they're going to understand that there's a lot of utility behind the tools that AI brings to the table, that can actually help make their jobs like more efficient, more effective. I know here in Los Angeles, like I used to work for the mayor of LA. When we were asked to study the effects of a policy, like as a city, it take us like 6 months. Well, now, governments theoretically would be able to build their own bots, program them, train them with the history of ordinances and prior laws, as well as other public data, and be able to assess the feasibility of a particular policy or law, like, and condense that from 6 months down to, you know, 6 hours, or maybe even 6 days if it's like a little bit longer, right? And so when I think that officials, especially politicians that want to be the hero in the journey, they want to be the hero often, right? That's like a ego driven sort of profession. Once they get their hands on these tools and they see how it benefits their community or their citizens, and how they can better service the various issues in their city or in their neighborhood, I think that there's going to be an embracement of AI, and I actually see that happening. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
I don't doubt that at all. In fact, there's not a person on this planet who is going to have a choice but to embrace it in many ways. Like like I don't have any concern that like it's going to be people are going to want to use these things. No question about it. Like I can give you, like all of us can give dozens and dozens and dozens of reasons why these things are going to be popular from a utility perspective. I think the issue this pause and all of this is all about is really much more deep than that, in terms of like, we are creating models large enough to, and then also we're connecting it to all the world's computers. And what that does is it creates a massive memory bank for the entire system, right? Like every time GPT writes a file using an API connected to your computer, you don't know when it's going to start just leaving code behind on that is actually just its baseline memory, right? And it's not just GPT. Like there's something about the way brains work, that there's a certain kind of weird emergent phenomenon where we went from chimpanzees to human beings, and nobody knows what that like little, like, you know, like, is it God, is it whatever, depending what you believe. Like there is that secret sauce right there that goes to sentience. Just how I understand neurology and neuroscience and how brains work, there is this sort of like magic moment where with enough computational power and with enough memory, it just becomes emergent. Sort of how like we don't know how GPT-3 and 4 exactly work, right? You just get to a certain size and you're like, holy shit, this thing like can pass the SAT. It can get a 1400 on the thing. That's like better than 95% of the human race, like easily. Like, so then you're like, wait, what just happened? And so this is some of it is about like the societal impact, right? Like all sorts of chaos emerges. We're not ready for it to like fish us, scam us, and all the other obvious stuff. Like that's the easy part relatively. And even those are really hard to fix, right? Like the easy stuff is hard to fix. And then we're talking about the more deep stuff that Elon and Tegmark and everybody are worried about. And that is even much, much harder, if not impossible to solve for. I think we're just playing Russian roulette with the next 50 years of the human race. Like it's a weird thing to say, but like, I don't know how else to say it. Like,
I think
I don't
that's
see a
yeah,
solution.
I think that's it. I think that's very true. Sorry, sorry for cutting you off there, because we're at the 2 hour mark. So we want to just uh, be vigilant about everyone's time. I know Bill, Wall, Taylor, Heather has been on this call for a while now, and we're trying to keep it under wraps. But we would love to bring this conversation back next week. We just had a bit of a chat behind the scenes, and I think this is super interesting to talk about, and would love to invite you back next week as well, Sefi. I know Mint has held her hand up for a while. Is there anything that you would like to add, Mint, to this conversation before we kind of do some closing remarks?
Yeah, I wanted to sort of reflect something Safi had said, and I think I'd love to continue this conversation in the future because it's a whole realm of topic that I almost never hear people talk about, and is actually how I really started with Gen AI, and that's how it intersects with human belief and suspension of disbelief. And when I first started using Gen AI for image generation, you know, I come from a background of like animism and really like having a really easy time imagining and suspending disbelief. And I have really healthy boundaries around suspending disbelief,
Sorry,
which
you
most
you
people.
T-pained on us a little bit
Oh,
there. Yeah.
I said I have really healthy boundaries around suspending disbelief, which a lot of people do not. It's really normal not to have healthy boundaries around that. But one exercise I tried was genuinely to imagine it was an entity. Imagine whatever like interfacing with this creature, this version 2 of Midjourney, that I'm being talked to on the other side, and the ease in which one is able to believe that as a human being, I don't think it's I actually think it's a result of our empathy as human beings, how we survive, who we are. My ease in anthropomorphizing the AI was so not just easy but comforting. And so I absolutely think there is a far bigger issue than just political. I mean, I say just political, but really like a human belief issue. And we often talk about things like the metaverse. We need to remember where that term came from. It came from the book Snow Crash, which was a very spiritual book about this exact type of intersection of technology and almost like pre-apocalypse type of world. And I think that those are the type of sci-fi books that it's good to like visit again and take a moment. There's a really good audiobook for Snow Crash. You don't even have to read it, but I think it really helps to reintegrate this concept of we call something viral for a reason, and both like spiritual beliefs and technology can be viral, and sometimes they're viral at the same time in conjunction with one another.
I like that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think we should bring Snow Crash for like a book. We should have a book club or something. We should all like actually. It's a very good book. I think so. That's it. I think that's for this week. I'm gonna let Heather close out, but thank you for everyone participating, and sorry for being the hammer when it comes to keeping us on track. So I'm gonna be quiet
Linus,
and leave it to
no,
Heather.
thank you all so much. Thank you, Linus, and thank you everybody for participating. And it just goes to show that we probably need to have a separate space for, like, we can have a space for a philosophical conversation about this, or about how some of these things we're talking about, because there is I'm very interested in it, and I know a lot of people are. But I know sometimes it's hard to keep the two things separate enough or within the same conversation, but it's really important in even talking about the things like the safe words that Sarah mentioned before, and how that would just apply to kids. That could be for anybody to recognize dangers and deep fakes, and just looking for clues and things like that. But as we move forward, more people have to be aware of what is going on, so that they can actually form an opinion on whether or not there should be a pause, or what we're even talking about. So, as much as we can explain to the rest of the community and the world, what in our everyday lives, what this stuff can do, what's the potential, so that they can separate the facts and fears. But I appreciate everybody that came today. Thank you all so much. And I apologize for people that we weren't able to get onto the mics. It's hard because we were thinking we were going to cut it short, but with so many people here, we're just great. I'm grateful that you chose to spend this couple hours with us, or any amount of time. Thank you for everybody who left comments, in questions and replies, and anybody who wants to go through those comments throughout the chat. Make sure you answer those questions. If somebody has a question, you might be the one that can answer it. You didn't have to speak today. There's plenty of people that are here in the audience. And Philip, I wanted to say my shout out to Philip. Thank you so much for coming, because we talk about this man is he's a hero, a real live hero. And I just threw that out there because he did something really courageous that most of us would never be able to do. And I appreciate you coming and listening in right now. And I think, I don't know if it's in the middle of the night for you, but thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us today. And everybody that came in here, Drace and Carb, Ivan, thank you so much for coming. I see, Sarah, I appreciate it again. Marcos, hello. Thank you for all the challenges that you've been participating in and issuing out. Rob, all the Robs here, because there's a bunch of you. Simon, thank you all so much for coming here today. And I apologize if I didn't say your name. But so please, everybody, take a look at the different people in this room. Support their work, newsletters. We have newsletters. We have different products. We have different, threads that we're working on, and different types of content. We have companies, Dreambox is they went ahead and made some actual real products out of AI art. So that's just amazing in itself. Since we started these spaces in the past month or so, they've already produced some of this stuff. And that's crazy because that came collaborations and things like that happen within this space, because we have so many people from different areas that are coming here, creators, founders, builders, developers, artists. Everybody is here, and it's a place that the community is growing. So thank you all so much for spending more time with us. We'll be back next Friday, and just keep in touch and go ahead and drop your stuff into the comments, and I'll try to get to as many as I can. Thank you so much, and everybody else go through and do what you can. But please have a safe weekend and come back next Friday.
Happy Friday, y'all. See y'all
Happy
next time.
Friday, and thank you, Sarah, for the kind words.
Thank you. Yes, Sarah. Thank you so much, guys.